All right, guys. This is Al from El Rey Collection, and we're here today. Well, I'm here today because Bill couldn't make it, and I have, as usual in my life, some technical difficulties. So what I was gonna do in the absence of Bill is kind of go through and answer some of these questions, which hopefully will provide some insights. And I do have access to the chat. I see that a number of people in it. So if you guys want to just send some messages via the chat and have me answer some different questions or comment on different things. It was a crazy, from my perspective, today was a crazy day in the hobby. Just it's one of these days that I think I always will look back on with these PSA 9 alphas, selling or kind of selling or maybe not selling. So I think that'll be really interesting to potentially talk about even more than some of the questions here, which I think are some good questions. So I'm gonna try to answer some of that stuff, and hopefully people can get on and watch this live, or I can figure out a way to post it. If not, and just not I can't do it from a technical perspective, I'm sure we can answer these same questions later, next week or the week after, because I think next week we'll probably have, gosh, we may already have the state of the hobby, market update, because I think a few things are gonna. Well, anyway, whatever. All right, guys. So I'm just gonna jump into some of the questions then. On the first one, I know that Fathers of Football, he's on duty, being the good fireman that he is, taking care of California, which is always tough. He says, and sorry I can't put these on the screen like Bill does, but let me just read it to you. Can you draw some parallels from vintage soccer players to certain baseball vintage players? Similarities in the era they played, success in their careers, fame in their time. Example. I've heard comparisons before to Charlton to Mantle, Dixie Dean to Babe Ruth, Meredith to Honest Wagner. Any other parallels you could draw? Thanks, guys. So, from my perspective, this is really hard, especially as an American, where we don't have, like, for me it's really easy to think about what Mantle was. It's really easy for me to think about what Ruth was and wasn't, and what Honest Wagner was. So I think these parallels are really hard for me, and I know that we want to make them because it puts us as Americans in a comfortable place to say, oh, he's the Honest Wagner. I don't think any of those that Aaron mentions here are wrong. I think that they feel right to me. Charlton to Mantle, they overlap in playing career significantly. Obviously, Charlton starts, about 8 or 9 years later. Dixie Dean, I think the number 60 was attached to him for the goals, as it was attached to Babe Ruth. So that's also a very easy comparison. Meredith was an epic player of the early game. He also was, not exactly always straight up. He got banned a number of times for a number of different things. So in a way, you could say, Honest Wagner was probably more like clean cut image, and maybe he was a little bit more somewhere between Honest Wagner and Ty Cobb. If you're gonna look at that, I liked Kellen's Masola to Clemente just because of the tragedy. I and I think Pip came to the game talking a little bit about how every country has their own Jackie Robinson or their own Babe Ruth or Mickey Mantle, and that's one thing that I've always thought is a really, really smart way to collect. If we generally believe the soccer market is going to explode, then every country has their great soccer market, right? So and they're great players that they'll remember, that may not make the best lists of all time, or may not make the top 10, certainly, right? That's impossible for most countries. So you start to think about, wow, if the hobby goes great, and if Mexico gets into it and the Mexican Americans, you've got to believe there's huge upside in Hugo Sanchez, right? You've got to believe that if, some of that trickles down to Peru, Telefilo Cubillas is going to go crazy. If vintage starts to get important in Chile beyond this recent generation, which is probably a highlight in Chilean football, you got to believe they're going to get to Figueroa. So, I think that, and then every one of these, I think it's absolutely right to talk about how every country has their own Jackie Robinson. So everyone, it's whether it's Wharton in the UK or Diagne in France or Andrade in Uruguay or Frederich really in Brazil, there are many different angles to look at important players from different places. It's always kind of weird because we never saw any of these baseball players play or these soccer players play, and there's no video, so we kind of have to go off of the historical account, and those are colored and are full of subjective biases, so it's really hard to overly what's the word, I don't know, feel certain about these comparisons. I mean, to a certain extent statistically, but soccer's never been great on the statistical side. So I think what is that? Some of the other questions that came across from Global Marco was who was the Shoeless Jackson of soccer, and I don't have a good answer to that. I don't know. I mean, in worldwide soccer, there was not a lot of, scandals. It was really kind of fledgling even in the 1930s. Remember, Uruguay decides not to participate in the 1934 World Cup. So I don't know. I don't even know why that thought jumped in my mind. I was trying to think of, a scandal of like, hey, the last three effective major tournament winners. 24 Paris, 28 oh no, hang on, did I get that right? 24 Paris, 28 Antwerp, was it? 30 World Cup, Uruguay wins them all and then decide not to participate. I mean, that's a little bit scandalous, but it's not about a particular player. It's or some sort of a scandal. There were some scandals. I mean, Meredith himself, like I mentioned earlier, got suspended. I think it was either fighting or betting. It may have been betting. So that's kind of a shoeless Joe, although I'm not 100% sure on that. I gotta clean my brain on those. So I think I don't have a lot of good answers. I think some of Fathers of Football's comparisons feel right to me, but I think when you start to think about broader, you're thinking about Pele, to Gretzky, and I know there's a lot of controversy about the number of goals and the 1,000+ and all that stuff, but the reality is, many of his goals were in legit competition in friendlies against massively important teams in Europe. So, it's probably somewhere in between his official records and his unofficial ones. I don't know. I'm sure Bill would have a better answer to this. So sorry, you guys. I just haven't spent a lot of time outside of the Dean Ruth, which becomes so simple because of the number, to kind of lock them up. I would say that. So I've got actually. Hey, let me go over and just double check while I'm here. So let's see what I've got. George Best to Mantle. Oh, I like that. That's from Kellen as well. That's a good one because they were both kind of womanizers, drunks, and both elite at their game. So I like that one. I think we could think of tragic stories. Who's a tragic story in baseball, but because of lifestyle choices that just doesn't pan out. That does pan out, but still is terrible. I can't really think of one, but obviously you'd match him with Garincha. So yeah, I thought some of those were good. again, I think we can ask Bill again when he shows up. That he comes back. So all right. So let's see what else I got here. And again, sorry for the makeshift preparation here, which is little to none. But so the next thing that we had was let's see this. Okay. Um okay, so this one's okay, an interesting topic. Founding fathers and icons of each country. People often forget Brazil won the 1950 World Cup. It was a national tragedy. Yes, actually, as was '98. I was there in that final, and oh my lord, you would have thought that half the population was wiped out. It was just terrible. Um, with the pioneers of soccer in each country, there would be no pay for every sport with such a history that is revered and their cards are money. Uh, for soccer, I've spoken to Brazilians. You have no idea. Yes. Okay. So this is really kind of an interesting concept because there is a when people think about typically an average fan think about the history of the sport, the history is typically limited to what they have witnessed, and maybe especially if it's a generational family, maybe a slightly backwards. It is completely understandable that very few hardcore British fans have no idea who Arthur Wharton was, and why Brazilian fans, even though they're massive fans, have no idea who Arthur Frederick was. And I think it's because of it's the recency bias at its greatest. I mean, when you look at the end of the century list, whether that was in basketball or in soccer, you'll find an amazing recency bias. I think they have, if I'm not wrong, I think the FIFA like internet poll at the end of the century had Baggio as the fourth best player ever. I mean, that is incredible recency bias. Not that he wasn't great, right? But he wasn't the fourth best player ever. It's just, you have that. So it's really hard. That's why it's important for us as a lot of us as vintage collectors to actually go back and make sure people don't lose sight of some of these important historical figures, which should only be measured in relative importance to the other figures of their time. The game has changed so much. Just like it's the same thing. It's like where Babe Ruth hit 16 home runs. That's not the game today. Nobody's throwing 100 miles an hour. We did. I look at Ohtani and I'm like, man, he's like probably 50 times better than Babe Ruth. The problem is everybody else is also 45 times better. But at his time, relative to his competitors, he was so much better. And I think that's why we need to, look at that. And I feel my responsibility is to help people to not lose sight of these amazing players. For all the flowers, that we say, hey, Iniesta, Javi, these guys were amazing players, and they were great. But fast forward 50 years, and I really doubt there's going to be a ton of people talking about them as much as we were today. Now, will they talk about Messi and CR7? Absolutely. Because there's a bias towards strikers, and just they are so much better than anyone from this time, right? But some of these other guys, maybe if you're certain club guys like Arsenal, you'll talk forever of Henry, but maybe maybe other players kind of get lost, right? So I think that that every sport has some people that are revered. I think it's interesting that when we talk about Derby County, they still sing Bloomer song. Bloomer's watching, and that helps perpetuate a historical figure, whereas other places don't have that, right? Remember, you know, I don't want to go back to race in the necessarily in the perspective of Frederich, Arthur Frederich in Brazil, but he was a mixed person, and those people didn't have a great place in society. I remember reading some stories of Jose Andrade, great epic Uruguayan player, but he was treated like shit in a lot of European places during the Olympics, right? And he was expected to serve his teammates, his white teammates. And I think most of us today would say that's fucking wrong, right? So, I think that a lot of players, epic players that probably deserve to be recognized, were sidelined by history. Not unlike, frankly, it's funny that the Negro League players of baseball, which by the way, are finally going to get their due after it's been more than 16 years since the Hall of Fame even entertain a conversation to look again at data for these early African American athletes to induct them to the Hall of Fame. So, I think as societies get wealthier, as we start to invest even small amounts of money into research and documentation, I think a lot of these guys are going to come to the forefront. And speaking as Pip did about the 1950 World Cup, I mean, your heart breaks for like the goalkeeper Barbosa for Brazil, who lets that goal in from Gija from Uruguay. He's basically harassed for his entire life, and this is actually one of the best goalkeepers from the late 40s through the early 60s, and he's like, hey, if I commit murder, I get 20 years in prison, but because of the Maracanazo, I got life in prison, and that's how serious it was, that loss in 1950. So every country though has certain stars that I think are awesome to collect and should be revered, and if they're not now, I think they actually represent some massive opportunity. Again, I think you're probably closer to 50-50 in Brazil, even when you're talking about Garrincha and Pelé, right? And Zico is not very far behind, and Socrates also. And yet, if you look at the card prices, it's like Pele and all these guys are like, way down here, right? I mean, the disparity is incredible, and that's because of the global recognition of Pele. But I actually bet if you ask Brazilians, it'd be de minimis, the difference. So anyway, those are some of those things. Oh, I gotta look over here. I don't know if I'm boring the shit out of you guys. Yeah, Sindelar, Keith. Hey, yeah, good to see you guys. Yeah, Sindelar. While an accident, I've I don't think that was. Look, I'm not a forensic scientist, but I think there's enough there to imagine that was not an accident, and that is a tragic story. But it wasn't. It was more state imposed as opposed to Garincha. He had some serious addictions. Whatever, he had 14 kids, killed his mother-in-law. Basically died of cirrhosis, like a terrible cirrhosis, like a alcohol-induced coma. I mean, just like over the top addiction issues. So and basically his team, took advantage of him. He was basically illiterate, never paid him, had 14 children. I mean, just tragic story. Sindelar tragic for a different reason: the reunification of Germany and Austria, and the sadness of that story, right? Them being one of the best teams of the 30s, Germany forcing them to withdraw from the World Cup in 38 in France is just a football tragedy as well, and beyond his personal death, tragedy. So, anyway, let's see what else. God, I'm sorry, guys. I may have missed some of this stuff. So, maybe while I kind of go through this, I'll just talk a little bit about a couple of the big things that are happening right now in the hobby, and I think the biggest one, obviously today, was the Pele nines, both of them that got posted today. One from Golden for $900,000, and then simultaneously a an offer for Rally to buy out people's shares for 892,000, which on a net basis was like 776, which is a lot of breakage. I'd say transaction cost. That's pretty insane to have, whatever that is, close to 15% transaction fees. But what I would say is, I that's a great day for vintage soccer. I think when you get this big card trading in the market, you're gonna get, it's to a certain extent the rising tide is gonna lift all boats. It also feels weird to me, if I'm completely honest about it. It feels like on the same day, I'm struggling with this, and because of that, and because the fact that I think that the PSA 9 Alpha is, probably the key card in the soccer industry, I would prefer to hold my piece of that as we kind of go forward. Hey, Chris. So, that's kind of my thoughts on this. I think I posted in the Discord a little bit about this today. I don't know if anybody wants to, comment or have questions we want to answer here, but I just think it's such a iconic, important card. And the Rally one, by the way, is a 9. I mean, I looked at that card super carefully, and it really, I had to make a choice back in December last year if I was going to go after that or go after the Benassi and Oliveira, Pele, and I decided to go after that one instead of the 9, and Rally got the 9. And it is absolutely iconic and super important card, and it's really good condition. A couple of the other 9s, I would not actually say that about, especially the 9 that was sold today from Golden. If you look at the about halfway down, slightly lower than that, there's kind of a scuff across the side. I had that card offered to me in the past, and I'd turned it down as completely overgraded. Like I thought it was a PSA 6 if I had to guess. So I have strayed away from that. I think it's incredibly overgraded, and if that card goes for 900,000, which is Golden said, then I really think the Rally card should go for more. So that's why I voted no. If you guys had shares, hopefully you guys, voted no. I think it's going to be an epic, card to hold for the long term. I don't know if anybody has any other questions or want me to pontificate a bit more why I don't think that's such a great deal. I mean, I think most of us think, I thought that was probably $1 million card, and now I'm thinking that it may be, even more than that, based on the fact that a not so good 9, traded for, 900,000. Well, what about a really good 9? And especially if we think about AI grading, this is one of the things I go back to, you guys about I've mentioned on a bunch of different videos, that if, like, from a practical standpoint, as AI grading comes in, most people for high dollar cards, in my opinion, are going to want those to be double graded or regraded. And if you're at a 9, generally I like 9s because 9s can become 10s and some 9s can go down, but that's when there's a pop of 9s and 10s. Here in the hobby, we're looking at 9s, 8.5s. I mean, with the Pele Alpha, there's 6 9s, 4 8.5s, and 5 8s. So I think, you're going to potentially see some play between these. So you got to really look at the card. And the Rally one, from my eyes, is a great freaking card. I mean, it's beautiful. That 9 from Golden take a look at it closely. You're not gonna like it. I've rejected that card at way reasonable prices over time, just because I thought it was crazy overgraded. Um, okay, so I think I'm getting through some of these again. My apologize for kind of picking it up here at the last second, guys. Let me see. Vintage just starting from zero would help. Oh, having these. Oh, because that's some of the same things. We've got that. Sorry that I'm reading here, guys. Trying to figure out if I'm missing anything. It'd be easier if you guys type something in the chat. If any of this is, if you want me to tackle something in particular. Let me see if I missed anything. Once you're such. Yeah. Is that all? Is that all we had, guys? I mean, I'm looking at the questions trying to see, and I don't see a ton of um questions this week, unless you guys sent them directly to Bill. I don't really know, how you guys are doing. I guess in whose rally? Rally is Rally Road, www.rallyrd.com. And what it is a fractional share company. This is for VK. And you can buy fractional shares in many different assets. And that happens to be the 1958 Pele PSA 9 that is that they own. Well, they manage and then is owned by the population of fractional owners. So if you go to www.rallyrd.com, you can see that there, or you can download the app on your phone, and they have everything from wine to cars to books to the original apples. So do I know who the buyer was on the Pele? No, I do not know who the buyer was on the Pele, and I'm trying to find out. I'm guessing it's either. I mean, obviously to drop $900,000 on a card, you got to be pretty high roller. I'm hearing a lot of institutional money is kind of coming in. I think that the fact that the soccer is getting on the SMR, that now has its own category at PSA, that anyone with a brain that can do relative math, which a lot of these hedge funds, that's all they do, can immediately come to a conclusion that soccer has a lot more runway than other sports if you're going to go into alternative assets, especially with the tailwind demand profile globally. So I think that I wouldn't be surprised if it's that type of money. And in those games, you can buy the holder because you're buying a grade, and you're either going to fractionalize it or you're going to shelve it, and you're going to pass it between institutions. And it's not a collector looking at a card like this. Well, this isn't that great, right? Oh, look at the card I grabbed. It's a Federich 1. I mean, yeah, okay, it's got some issues to it, but I mean, how many of these are there? The answer is there's 3 of them that are graded, right? So you're not super concerned in vintage. So I don't know who it was, but I'll tell you personally, I'm getting lots of inbound things from auction houses that know the types of stuff that I have, that are saying, hey, these guys are willing to pay 2 times the last sale on this card if you're willing to sell it. So there's a lot of, not just are we seeing this on eBay sales, on other stuff, I honestly feel like we had the lull, and I just feel this rumbling underneath us of like a whole new push. And it may only be on the high end cards, because I think there are different markets. You've got the high end market where people are investing on behalf of institutions, on behalf of fractionals, on behalf of the ultra wealthy, and that's totally different from where most of us are, which is more on the collector side, down market. So on the lower grade stuff. So I think they're I'm definitely feeling that on the high end stuff, and yeah, I have some high end cards, but the vast majority of the stuff I have is over here. So I'm really feeling it over here, and we're seeing this in the market, right? Another question was about the how do we feel about the Mesa sale, and I feel really good about it, and I feel good about it for multiple reasons. Number one, I mean, that's an epic card. If you guys saw my video on the 1920s cards, I mean, that's a top 3 card from the 20s, and that's saying a lot because there's a lot of great cards from the 20s. So I think it's a really important card, number one. Number two, I think the price, while yes, it seems high versus where other Masses have sold in time, that particular one absolutely deserves a premium. And by the way, all the other ones I think have been stepping up. I think it's hard to get into Mesa now for less than $1,000. I think that there's too many people looking at him. Most people now understand that he is absolutely one of the most important pre-war players at all. Won 2 World Cups, was just still considered in many polls the best Italian player ever, right? So you think about, I don't know what the pop is, but let's just say it's 10. Graded pop is probably less than 5. I don't know even if PSA grades it. So whatever it is, 7,000, 7,500 for a top 5 pre-war player. He shows up in, if I'm not wrong, Top End Soccer, FIFA 100. He shows up in a lot of the top 100 player lists of the 20th century. And most of those lists only have 2 or 3 or 5, max pre-war players. So you're talking about really an elite player and a super tough card and a really attractive card. It really wins on the eye appeal from my perspective. Such a great image. Okay, that one's a little off center, right? It's got a little dirty back. But guys, when we're talking about these cards, they come across, I think we had mentioned this even before it went to auction or finished at auction. It went for $800 when it first sold 6 years ago or 7 years ago, maybe 8 years ago. I don't know. And I lost it. And people at the time were like, whoa. I mean, that's going for twice of what a Pele Alpha was going for mid-grade. And people are like, whoa, that's crazy. And then I had to pay a couple years later, like double that, $1,500 for my copy, which in fairness, while it grades low, it's got exceptional eye appeal. Great clarity. It's not, miscut. So $7,500 for this card. I actually think whoever bought it is going to do really well. And I've been a little bit disappointed that nobody from the Discord came out and flashed it and said I got this in hand, because it is really a super epic card. And I just say, hey, congrats to whoever bought it. I don't think they're going to get hurt on that card. And as a collector, it's really nice to hold a piece like that. I just think that it's really, really, really cool. So I didn't know that. So, and then, oh yeah, there was a question Kellen just reposted that was probably in the Discord that I missed, about trades, asking about some of the biggest, best trades. Well, since Bill isn't here, he's going to trade me his Orsi finally. No, it's a joke. I wish he would trade me his Orsi. So, I think he asked about the biggest, the worst, and best trades of all time that I can, think of. And I think that my biggest trade, to me, most of the time, I'm trying to fill holes in my collection. I think those of you that have kind of followed a little bit my collection through time recognize that what I typically do is I get any card. I mean, this is how we coach Brad at the beginning. get any copy you can of a card, and then later try to upgrade. And if you think it's a card with a lot of potential, hold the other one. Or if you just need to recapitalize, sell off your copy, which is actually Bill did this like incredibly well, and continues to do this really well. I have a hard time letting anything go, but I still did that to a certain extent. I mean, anybody who look at my eBay store, I mean, I sell a lot of stuff, and I just, all of those are the duplicates where I look at them both side by side, and I say, okay, this one's a little bit better. I'll keep that one, and I'll sell the other one. But the favorite things for me is to try to trade for things that I don't have, and usually those have to be pretty rare. So and where you can find kind of arbitrage typically is some Europeans really struggle with the South American cards, but can be very strong with the European cards. So I think that there's always a natural match in those types of trades. The tough thing with trading is this international shipping thing where I need to ship you that card, then you need to ship me this card, and they can arrive at different times. So it's not as easy, and I don't have nearly as many trades in soccer as I do in baseball, which is mostly an American sport. But I do remember tracking down some really cool very rare German cards. I think some of the, if I'm not mistaken, some of the gold Beckenbauer rookies, I set up a trade, and it included some US and Latin American cards. I can't really fully remember, Kellen, what those were, but I think the learning that I took out of it is, just like Carl in his book, when he talks in the back about the relative rarities of different cards, his perspective is different from mine. Because if you live in Italy or France and you have access, or the UK, you have access to all these little paper stores and stuff, you're going to get a better feeling for what happens to be more common in those places. And then if you've developed great, sources and sourcing in other countries, Argentina or Uruguay, even though those are all pretty tough, they're next to impossible for someone from Europe. So it's really kind of understanding what people collect, and then, trading to try to get those holes filled. But unfortunately, I don't have as many great stories and trades in soccer because of the difficult logistics. Even though I have, a complete trust of, 95% of the people that I, come in contact with, it's harder to trade, and you really need to find those, arbitrage, opportunities. That said, like this, we do a lot of like, I think because of the global nature of this hobby, always trying to help other people. Like right now, I have in my PSA submissions from multiple different European collectors who don't typically grade, but are just old time collectors, where they send me stuff to my house, and then I'll include it in a PSA shipment, and then I'll get it back, well, in this case, a year from now, and then have to ship it to them so they can avoid all these customs and fees. So I wish I had some more epic stories, but my most favorite trade that I didn't do, and I was super, super close to doing it, was you guys probably know the 1950 Tingle set has always been a focus of mine, but also many other collectors, because not only is the 1950 World Cup a crazy, amazing World Cup, but it also, has the amazing Brazilian team, which lost, the crazy Uruguayan team, which pulled off the upset of the century. It has the American team, which is just crazy rare, and super important because they beat England 1-0. It's our one soccer highlight outside of the third place in the 1930 World Cup. And then, on top of that, it has bizarrely the São Paulo team, which was on a tour in Sweden, during this time, which is where the tingles were issued. And so you have a Leonidas da Silva card, which is super rare, and most old time collectors love it. And I was really searching for one. I didn't have one at this point, and it was just brutal. And it was like a con, one of these top 10, and somebody had it, and they offered me that card in exchange for my PSA 8 Alpha. And we exchanged scans. And by the way, that card had sold for $1,500. The Leonidas da Silva. This is way obviously pre boom, and I mean this is many years ago. And I'm thinking about it, and I really want the Leonidas da Silva card. And I ultimately just say, gosh, I have at this point probably 6 Pele Alphas. But this is my highest graded, and I've never been super focused on having the highest graded, but I was like, I just think from a long-term perspective, this one has much more upside. So I turned away the Leonidas da Silva, and ultimately in time was able to find my own copies. I think I have 2 of that card, but that is probably my best story of the trade that would have devastated me in the long term. So I am glad that I didn't make that trade. So that wasn't one of your lists, but it would have been the worst, and it was, I'd say, the best avoided trade of all time in my collection. So that's to answer that. Let me see if I missed anything. I didn't post anything on the Discord. Or, sorry again for the makeshift thing to try to make this happen tonight. We all wish, Bill the best. Yeah. So, hey, Colin, yeah, you're right. I dodged a big-ass bullet, to put it that way. And by the way, the Leonidas, is probably a 3,000, maybe even 5 because of the tingles. Probably $5,000 card, maybe a little less, but I mean, obviously, I would have been regretting that trade for a long time. Even though I love that card, it's one of one of my favorite cards, and it's super hard to get. But yep, definitely dodged a bullet there. I don't know. So I don't see anything else on the thing here yet on the Discord. And then let me just check the chat, see if I missed anything. Again, sorry guys that we kind of had to change the platform. And yeah, I don't see anything else unless, okay, here we go. I'll give you guys a minute or two if you want to ask me any particular questions. For those of you who don't know, in the meantime, I do get a lot of questions, and I think most of you guys in the premium have this pretty solidified, but this week I dropped a video on the YouTube about grading, what I like, what I don't like about different grading companies. That may be helpful to some of you. Knowing the names here, I don't think that that's going to be overly relevant for most of you guys. I'm going to try to do a best 10 cards of the 1930s this week. Heads up, there'll be some Deans in there. Definitely some Dr. Sorosi, a guy nobody's talking about. Hard to get his cards, but for you guys, get out there, search, this week and next week, see if you can find some, because he's got a Koenig, he's got a Kamler, but you I mean, definitely get out and search for him, because totally epic player. So get out there. I think the Mesa market, unfortunately, because of this big sale, and that's the one thing I don't love about doing the videos, is it seems to make a run on players, and that's really not the intention at all. I just want to get the information out there. So I would either tell you, like I'll post typically, hey, I'm going to drop a video on this player in case you want to go see what's out there on eBay ahead of time. But, right after my video drops, I think it's probably not the best time to get into the player. Let it go for a few months and try to have your players kind of in a row of knowing what you're going to get. Don't get too caught up in the FOMO, right? On that. Okay, so here, okay. Have you asked if PSA would grade the 1965 pin? Yeah, so I have not asked for that. They are not. First of all, it's a long base on that pin, and I will show you while we're here. Hopefully, I have some stuff that got returned from PSA. Sorry to put my back to you guys, but I figured I'd show you if I could find it. Pins from the 1930 World Cup that just got returned. That they didn't want to do the research on them, and dang, I thought I had them here. Oh well. If you guys, I'll try to find a picture and post it in the premium. But it's they're little buttons, and the way PSA traditionally does it, because that's how baseball did it, was they'll do the small circular ones with the back that has the pin that is only slightly larger than the circular solenoid, I think, circle. So I think that the 65 Cruyff pin, just the base is too long, so they don't have a holder, because the PSA holder for the circular pins is round. So I haven't gone down that route. Like, honestly, I'd prefer if PJ, who has like 50 of those pins, went down that route. I probably have, one or two that I just have around here, but I don't think they'll grade that, Chris, just because they don't have a holder for it, and it also requires research, which they don't want to do. And in the case of my Uruguayan pins that I sent in, they were they were even on Allen's website. These pins from the 1930 World Cup, which frankly are really, really cool, and I really wanted them to be in those little PSA pin holders, but I just don't think that that they'll do that. I find them really hard, and then the documentation on the set. There's some Dutch pages that talk a little bit about it, but that's not the type of thing that they want right now, and I just see them being a complete pain in the ass on that. But more than anything, I think it's about the holder. But the research, between the holder and the research combination, I don't see it happening. Now, that said, I'm a little surprised that they decided to holder the Eusebio 61 Phosphoros set, as well as the 58 Remington set, which both come out of Matchboxes. These guys have graded, now they've graded both of these and a number of them already, and I think you're going to see more of these get graded, just because they aren't typically, they aren't something that I would have thought that they would have graded. Anyway, you guys probably know those. Here they are. Sorry I'm so disorganized, guys. But these, they're grading these in both matchbook form, the blank form where it doesn't have the scratch surface, I think, as well as the cut form of the same thing. So they're grading these. So there's a bunch of others, and there's different versions of this. You've got the red version, which I understand was an export, the black version. So they're grading these and they are rookie cards for Eusebio. They're cartoons if you like that. But so those are it's always fun when I grab something and I'm like, what the hell is this? Oh yeah, this is great, right? Look at this. Oh yeah. Fun. Another Maradona Hand of God ticket. Here you go. World Cup final ticket. Brazil 4, Italy 1. Yeah, I just got so much random crap. Oh, this is my favorite World Series for those of you guys, because I'm an Angel fan. Only time they made it to the World Series, so went to all those games. That was fun. Here's the 66 World Cup ticket final where England wins. Here's the 78 World Cup ticket where Argentina wins as well. Some random Eusebio. This Cubillas is kind of fun. This is when he played in Portugal. Cubillas. For those of you guys who don't, I never see this guy's name in the Discord. Cesar Rodriguez, also known just as Cesar, played for Barcelona. Epic goal scorer. You can find his cards out there as a common. Go get him. I know it's a little weird that I'm just kind of, hey, yeah, go do this, but I just happen to pick up that stack. So, I think that. So I'm not gonna say, Chris, that there's zero chance that they'll do that, but right now I would assume if buying those that you're never gonna be able to get them graded. There's a Woodstock ticket, unbroken, so that's kind of fun for the music fans out there. Yeah, so if you can get a response to that, I mean, I would personally put PJ on it. Because PJ is, he's got like 50 of them, so there's no one with a more vested interest. But give it a shot. Let us know what you find out. Oh, I also do have some news. I don't think I have any of them around here. But PSA is getting really good at some of these Brazilian issues. And it's probably no coincidence that our friend Matt Hendler, who has a lot of Brazilian experience and has a lot of access to the full albums, are getting some stuff. But for the first time ever, they're grading the Balas Ídolos set, which is super exciting to me because they didn't used to do that. For those of you guys who don't know, let me see if I can find this. This is this really cool set from 1959. Really beautiful set like this. Let's see, no, I can't. Maybe I just won with this brown border around it. These really nice printed backs. These are just great, beautiful cards. And now they're grading these. So they have the full database in there. And of course you've got, Milton Santos. Here's a couple Garinchas. I mean, this is great. The Djalma Santos, Didi. These are just fantastic. So, obviously you can't grade right now with the high prices, all of these cards, but so I'm super excited that they're grading those. And there's a lot of people, and including a number in the Discord, that are really helping to get these full albums, all the data that PSA needs, and getting the dating right, going back and looking at things carefully. So, I'm pretty pumped about the effort that PSA is putting into getting the stuff right, cleaning up the slabs, and starting to grade some issues without being scared because they actually have the data as opposed to not having it. So anyway, that's some pretty exciting news, and I think we're going to hear more and more of that as time goes on. Well, here, I'll just leave these here. So, all right, well, I'll just double check to see if there's any more, questions anywhere around here. Again, sorry for the discombobulation here, but hopefully we answered some of these questions. Yeah, all right. Hey, great, Chris. If you're gonna try, let us know if you get a response. No harm, no foul. They've said no to me many times, so you get disappointed, but you'll never get a yes if you don't try. So certainly trying on that would be great. And what I'll do is I'll just kind of pause here and you guys see if anybody, has any other questions in the last couple minutes. In the meantime, I'll show you any weird stuff that I have sitting around here. 1953 Garrincha. Pretty cool, fun card to look at. What else do we got? Oh, this was fun. In my grading video, I was showing a bunch of cards, and they were, 3 different versions of the R9 cards. One in a BGS holder, one in an SGC holder, and then another one in a PSA holder. So the PSA is a 9. The SGC is a 10 actually, and then this one's a 7. That's 6.5. What else I got laying around here? Any other things? Doesn't look like you guys got any more questions. So I guess the show and tell is generally over. It's more fun to have Bill here, but we'll hopefully do that next week. And if you guys have any questions, comments, or concerns, certainly feel free to reach out to me directly or Bill. Maybe give him a day or two off, and we will certainly be in touch in the Discord. So if nobody has any other questions, I think I'll try to figure out how to turn this off. But have a great night, guys. Enjoy your collections. Don't feel nervous or bad about reaching out. I love chatting with you guys and trying to help you out where I can. So anyway, have a good night, and we'll be in touch. Take care, everybody.